"Enjoy the swim with the sharks," Marcus whispered, his voice smooth as silk against her ear. Before Alina could turn, a hard shove struck the center of her back. The world tilted, then vanished. She hit the water with a bone-jarring splash, cold and merciless. Salt filled her nose and mouth as she flailed, disoriented, fighting to surface. When her head broke through, gasping, she saw the yacht gliding away, its polished deck glowing under the sun. On board, Marcus stood beside his mother, Vivian, both watching. Vivian's shrill laughter cut through the wind, cruel and delighted. For a moment, Alina thought it was a nightmare, some twisted prank. Then realization hit. Her husband had tried to kill her. The water was ice cold, each wave heavier than the last. Her linen dress clung to her body, dragging her down. "Marcus!" she screamed, voice hoarse. The yacht didn't slow. She could still hear Vivian's laughter, sharp and distant. Panic clawed at her throat. The Florida coastline was a blur far behind, lost beyond the horizon. Alina's arms ached as she kicked against the weight of her clothes. Every breath burned. Every second felt borrowed. They weren't coming back. She was 32, a woman who had fought her way through corporate boardrooms, not oceans. But giving up wasn't an option. Not for her. "My name is Alina Grant," she thought as she treaded water, teeth chattering. "And my husband just tried to murder me." She wanted to laugh, bitter, hollow laughter, at the absurdity. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of loyalty, love and compromise. All leading to this. This trip was supposed to be a celebration. Their anniversary. Marcus had insisted on bringing his widowed mother along. "She's lonely," he'd said. "It'll mean a lot." Now Alina understood. She had agreed to her own execution. Her legs felt like lead. Her breath came in ragged bursts. The yacht was a speck on the horizon now. "Think, Alina," she whispered to herself. "You've faced worse." But she hadn't. Not this. The ocean didn't negotiate. It swallowed. She forced herself to remember the woman she used to be. The biotech genius who built Genovax Pharmaceuticals from a rented lab and a dream, turning it into a $2.5 billion empire. She had survived corporate sabotage, betrayal, and lawsuits. Surely she could survive this. She had to. As waves rolled over her head, images flashed. Marcus's smiles, his promises, his lies. They'd met 5 years ago at a medical conference in Seattle. He'd been charming, funny, disarming. He'd told her she was the most brilliant woman in the room. She'd believed him. Now she saw the truth. He'd been hunting her all along, the fortune, the power, the name. And Vivian had coached him every step of the way. "New money," she used to sneer. "People like you buy class. You don't have it." Vivian Hale had grown up with old money, old manners, and older prejudices. She despised that Alina had worked for everything she owned. From the first dinner they shared, she made it clear. "You'll never be one of us." Marcus had laughed it off back then. "Don't take her seriously, she's just particular." But Alina saw it now. They'd been partners in crime, not mother and son but co-conspirators. And she had handed them the perfect opportunity. A private yacht, open sea, no witnesses. The water stung her eyes. Her limbs screamed for rest. "Not like this," she muttered, coughing salt water. "You don't get to win, Marcus." She rolled onto her back, floating, conserving strength. Above her, seagulls circled lazily, indifferent to human despair. Her mind raced. Tides, currents, direction of the sun. She tried to orient herself. There had to be a way out. And then, in the distance, a speck. Fishing boat. Oh. She forced her body upright. "Hey!" she croaked. "Help!" Her voice was lost in the wind, but she waved, splashed, screamed until her throat tore. The boat turned. 2 figures moved quickly on deck, pointing, shouting to each other. Alina's strength broke just as the fishing vessel drew close. Strong hands gripped her arms, pulling her from the water, dragging her over the railing. She collapsed onto the deck, gasping and shaking uncontrollably. "Easy now," a deep voice said. "You're safe." She opened her eyes to see a weathered man with kind eyes and gray stubble. "Thomas," he introduced himself softly. "My son and I found you just in time." Wrapped in blankets, sipping hot coffee, Alina trembled as warmth slowly returned. Thomas studied her face, sensing the storm behind her silence. "You running from something?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Running towards something," she said hoarsely. "Revenge." He nodded like he'd heard it before. "Fair enough." She borrowed his phone and dialed 3 numbers: security, lawyer, business partner. Each call ended with the same cold promise. "He thinks I'm dead. Don't tell anyone I'm alive." By the time the boat reached shore, war had already begun. Diana, her co-founder and best friend, was waiting at the private dock. She wrapped Alina in a hug that nearly crushed her ribs. "Marcus called the Coast Guard," she whispered. "He said you fell overboard. He even cried." Alina pulled back, eyes burning. "Then let him mourn. He'll wish I stayed dead." Diana handed her dry clothes, a burner phone, and a black SUV. As the boat faded behind them, Alina looked out at the dark sea one last time. "Vivian." "Marcus, you wanted me gone," she whispered. "Now I'm coming for you." The drive to the safe house was silent except for the hum of the engine and the faint crash of waves in the distance. Alina sat in the back seat, wrapped in Diana's oversized coat, staring at her trembling hands. She had faced mergers worth billions with steady composure, but tonight her heartbeat refused to slow. When they reached the secluded property, the gates slid open. Patricia, her head of security, waited outside, hand resting on her holstered sidearm. "Boss," she said quietly, eyes widening at the sight of her alive. "Not a word," Alina ordered. "We start now." Patricia nodded. "Already pulling the yacht's GPS and security data." Marcus wiped the cameras, "but I can get backups." Alina exhaled slowly. "Good. Let's bury them with evidence." Inside the safe house, Gregory Voss, her lawyer, sat at the long oak table surrounded by files and printouts. He looked up as Alina entered. "Jesus, Alina, we thought dead," she finished for him. "That's the story they're selling." Gregory slid a folder toward her. "Then let's make sure they choke on it." Diana joined them, laptop open, screens filled with data. "We pulled bank statements, property transfers, and communication logs. Your husband's been busy." Alina sat down, her voice cold and sharp. "Show me everything." Patricia laid out the timeline. Transactions, call records, and offshore transfers that painted a perfect picture of deceit. "Marcus set up 12 shell companies," she explained. "Started small, $500,000 here, $1 million there. But in the last 6 months he accelerated. 15 million gone." Alina's jaw tightened. "And Vivian." Gregory pointed to another file. "Half those companies trace back to accounts under her name in the Cayman Islands." Alina's hands curled into fists. "So they didn't just plan my death, they rehearsed it. They went over everything until dawn. The yacht's last GPS ping, deleted security footage, and even hotel invoices showing mother and son meeting weeks before the trip. They covered every angle." Diana murmured. "Not every angle," Alina replied. "They didn't expect me to come back." Gregory smiled grimly. "You've got enough to bury them legally." "Legally," Alina said softly. "That's step 1. Step 2 is personal." By morning, Gregory was on the phone with 3 federal contacts. "Freeze every account tied to Marcus and Vivian Hale," he instructed. "I don't care whose name it's under." Patricia sent encrypted data packets to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit and the SEC. "Evidence trail's clean," she confirmed. "By the time they wake up, they won't be able to buy a cup of coffee." Alina listened quietly, sipping black coffee. "Don't alert them yet," she said finally. "I want to see their faces when they realize what's happening." While her team worked, Alina showered and changed into jeans and a black blouse. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired, pale, but alive. Her reflection smirked. You survived worse. When she stepped back into the living room, Diana was watching a news report on her phone. Marcus just gave a statement, she said, disgusted. Alina froze. What did he say? That you fell overboard by accident. He's heartbroken. Alina laughed darkly. Heartbroken. Let's break his heart properly. Night fell again before they made their move. Patricia drove while Alina sat in silence, memorizing every turn. Her mansion stood at the edge of Coral Gables, glass and marble glittering against the bay. All lights were on. Looks like a celebration, Patricia muttered. Of course, Alina replied. They think I'm gone. The car stopped just beyond the hedges. Once we start this, Patricia warned, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment he pushed me, Alina said, opening the door. They slipped through the side gate. The alarm system had been disabled. Marcus's carelessness. Inside, the house smelled of champagne and smoke. Laughter drifted from the living room. Alina crept closer, peeking through the archway. Marcus lounged on the couch with a glass of her best Bordeaux. Vivian sat beside him, pearls gleaming at her throat. To Alina, Marcus said mockingly, raising his glass. Vivian's laugh sliced through the air. May she rest in pieces. Alina's pulse slowed. The anger that had burned in her chest turned to ice. She stepped into the doorway. Touching toast, she said calmly. The glasses froze midair. Marcus's smile vanished, replaced by disbelief. The wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the marble. Alina, he whispered, voice trembling. You're alive, she finished. Disappointed. Vivian's face drained of color. You fell. I remember, Alina interrupted. You laughed. Marcus took a step forward. This isn't what you think. No, Alina said coldly. It's worse. They stood frozen as she pulled her phone from her pocket. I have every record, she said. The theft, the calls, the GPS data from the yacht. Even your conversations about my will. Vivian sneered. You can't prove. Alina hit play. Marcus's voice filled the room from a hidden recording. She actually thought I loved her. The color drained from his face. Consider this, Alina said softly. The FBI's outside, waiting for my signal. Vivian hissed. You wouldn't dare. Oh, Vivian, Alina said, smiling faintly. You really don't know me at all. Marcus stumbled backward, eyes wild. Alina, please listen to me. It wasn't like that. She tilted her head, calm and composed. Then tell me, Marcus. What part did I misunderstand? The shove, the laughter, or the money you stole before you killed me? He sank to his knees, trembling. I panicked. Vivian, she pressured me. It was her idea. Vivian scoffed. Coward. You were eager enough when you thought you'd inherit everything. Alina crossed her arms. So the loyal son and the grieving widow turn on each other. How poetic. Marcus looked up at her, voice cracking. Please, Alina, I can fix this. You already did, she said softly. By confessing. Blue and red lights flooded the room as Patricia entered, flanked by FBI agents. Marcus Hale, Vivian Hale, an agent barked. You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Vivian's diamond bracelet clattered as they handcuffed her. You'll regret this, she shrieked. Marcus didn't resist. His eyes stayed locked on Alina's face. Pale, broken, pleading. Alina, he whispered as they led him out. I loved you once. She stared at him for a long moment. No, she said. You loved what I owned. Then she turned away, not looking back as they were taken from her home. When the last car pulled away, the house fell quiet for the first time in days. The echo of footsteps, of laughter, of betrayal, all gone. Patricia lingered near the doorway. You sure you're okay to stay here tonight? Alina nodded, staring out at the moonlit bay. This is my home. Built it. I won't let their shadows live here anymore. Patricia gave a firm nod. Then I'll keep a team outside until morning. Thank you, Alina murmured. For everything. When she was alone, she walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, reclaiming her space inch by inch. This was survival. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. She couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., Alina sat at her kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, staring into nothing. Her mind replayed the ocean, the shock, the cold, the silence under the waves. Then it replayed Marcus's expression when he saw her alive. Patricia entered quietly. You haven't closed your eyes once. Alina gave a humorless laugh. I'm afraid if I do, I'll wake up in that water again. Patricia sat down opposite her. You survived him. Don't let him haunt you now. Alina whispered. He almost took everything but not me. Never me. By dawn the world knew. Her attempted murder dominated headlines. Billionaire biotech CEO survives husband's murder plot. Reporters swarmed outside her gate. Cameras flashed through the fence. The phone never stopped ringing. Investors, friends, journalists, all demanding the same thing. The story. Alina ignored them. She sat in her study, curtains drawn. Her company's stock dipped for 3 hours before roaring back when investors realized she was alive. Diana called, voice sharp with relief. You're trending worldwide. Alina sighed. For surviving my husband. Not for curing diseases. That says a lot, doesn't it? Diana chuckled softly. The world loves a comeback. Let them watch yours. The FBI investigation moved fast. Marcus and Vivian's accounts were frozen, their assets seized. Gregory called later that day. They're both facing federal charges. Attempted murder, financial fraud, and embezzlement. They won't see sunlight for decades. Alina leaned back in her chair. Good. Do you want to testify? Yes, she said simply. They'll hear the truth from me. Not from headlines. After hanging up, she stood by her window, watching reporters scatter like ants beyond her gates, let them chase the story. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the evidence. That evening, Diana arrived with takeout and 2 bottles of wine. I brought pad thai, she said softly, setting the food on the counter. And something stronger if you need it. Alina smiled faintly. You always know what I need. They ate in silence for a while, both lost in thought. Finally Diana said, you realize what you did, right? You turned a death sentence into a strategy. Alina looked at her friend. I didn't survive to be pitted. I survived to remind them who they tried to destroy. Diana raised her glass. To the woman they couldn't drown. Their glasses clinked softly, a toast born of fire. Weeks later, Alina walked into the courthouse in a black suit, composed and silent. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, handcuffed, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. Vivian avoided her gaze, her arrogance drained away. When Alina took the stand, the room went still. Tell us what happened that night, the prosecutor said. She inhaled deeply. My husband whispered in my ear, enjoy the swim with the sharks. Then he pushed me. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Marcus bowed his head. Vivian's face crumpled. Alina's voice stayed steady. But I don't drown easily. Trial lasted 4 weeks. Evidence after evidence, recording after recording. The truth unfolded like a precise blade. When the jury returned, no one breathed. Guilty on all counts. Vivian collapsed in tears. Marcus stared blankly ahead, eyes hollow. Alina sat unmoving, her expression unreadable. The judge sentenced them both to life in prison. As guards led them away, Marcus looked back one last time. I never meant for it to go that far, he said weakly. Alina's reply was ice cold. You pushed me. That's how far it went. When it was over, Alina walked out of the courthouse to a wall of cameras and cheers. She raised her head high, her eyes calm and fierce. She wasn't just the woman who had survived the ocean. She was the woman who had conquered it. Reporters shouted questions. What will you do now? Alina smiled faintly. Live. Diana met her at the car. You did it. No, Alina corrected softly as she looked toward the horizon. I just started living again. Weeks after the verdict, Alina returned to Genovax Pharmaceuticals for the first time. The employees stood silently as she entered the lobby, the click of her heels echoing across the marble floor. Some smiled nervously. Others looked at her with awe. She gave a small nod. Let's get back to work. In the boardroom, Diana handed her a folder. We stabilized operations. Investors are confident again. You've been nominated for CEO of the Year. Alina smiled faintly. I don't want awards. I want stability. Diana leaned back. You've earned more than stability, Alina. You've earned peace. Alina looked out the window at the Miami skyline. Peace, she repeated softly. I'll believe it when I feel it. That night, Alina stood alone on her balcony overlooking the water. The sea was calm now, a mirror of moonlight and memory. She could still feel the cold around her ankles, still hear Marcus whispering. Sometimes she woke at night gasping for air, heart pounding, convinced she was drowning again. Patricia had insisted she hire a therapist, but Alina refused. I don't want to talk about him, she told Diana once. I want to forget he existed. Diana had only sighed. Forgetting isn't healing. But Alina wasn't ready to heal yet. She was still rebuilding her armor. The world couldn't get enough of her story. Talk shows called her the billionaire who came back from the dead. Every magazine wanted her face on their cover. Alina turned them all down. One morning, Patricia tossed a glossy magazine onto her desk. On the cover, Marcus and Vivian Hale, The Fall of Greed. Alina didn't even glance at it. Trash, she said. Patricia smirked. They'll rot in prison. You don't need to read their obituary. Alina closed her laptop. Exactly. I'm writing my own. Her mansion felt colder than ever. She had redecorated, changed the furniture, even repainted the walls, but memories lingered like shadows. Some nights, she stood in her bedroom doorway, staring at the space where Marcus once slept. It wasn't longing. It was disbelief that she had ever shared her life with a man so hollow. She whispered once into the quiet, "You took my trust, not my soul." Then she turned off the light. For the first time she slept without nightmares. Months passed. Alina poured herself into new projects, launching a foundation for women entrepreneurs in STEM. We'll fund women who are building something real, she told Diana during a press meeting. Women who don't get invited to the table. We'll build them their own. Applause filled the room. A journalist asked, "Why this initiative now?" Alina smiled. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated, and to rise anyway." Later that night, she looked at the ocean again. For the first time, it didn't scare her. It inspired her. One morning, Gregory arrived with an envelope. "It's from Marcus," he said. Alina's brows rose. "From prison?" Gregory nodded. "He wanted you to have it." She hesitated, then tore it open. "Alina," it read, "I think about that day every hour. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope one day you'll remember me as the man who loved you before greed consumed me." She folded the letter neatly, placed it in her fireplace, and lit a match. As the paper burned, she whispered, "You never loved me. You loved my reflection in your ambition." Weeks later, she decided to see for herself. When she entered the visitation room, Marcus looked older, thinner, defeated. His eyes flickered with shame. "You came. I wanted to look you in the eye," she said. "For closure. For confirmation," she replied. He looked down. "I'm sorry, Alina." She studied him quietly. "You're sorry you failed." He shook his head. "You've changed." "I had to," she said simply. "Survival changes people." Then she stood and walked away, leaving him staring at the woman he could never break. Vivian never survived prison life. Her pride collapsed faster than her health. When the news of her passing reached Alina, she felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. "Doesn't feel like victory," she told Diana. That's because revenge isn't healing, Diana said softly. Alina looked down at the waves below her office balcony. Maybe. But it's justice. Diana squeezed her shoulder. Justice gave you your life back. Don't waste it living in the past. For once, Alina didn't argue. Time softened the edges. Alina took up painting, something she hadn't done since college. Her canvases were all ocean scenes. Dark blues, gold horizons, endless light. Patricia joked. You're painting your trauma. Alina smiled. I'm painting my peace. She started attending charity galas again, not for publicity, but to remind herself she belonged to the world of the living. Every handshake, every smile was proof. She had rebuilt not just her empire but herself. One afternoon, as she left her office, a young woman waited outside with nervous eyes and a resume clutched in her hands. Miss Grant, she said shyly, I read your story. You're why I started studying biotechnology. Alina paused, studying her. What's your name, Lydia? Alina smiled warmly. Lydia, come inside. Let's see what you've got. As they walked through the glass doors, sunlight spilled across the floor. For the first time in a long while, Alina felt something pure. Not revenge, not rage, hope. Months passed, and Alina found herself in lecture halls again. But this time, she wasn't a student or a speaker for investors. She was a teacher. At the University of Miami, she stood before a crowd of young women in lab coats and curious eyes. You will face resistance, she told them. You'll be underestimated, ignored, or dismissed. But that's how you'll know you're breaking barriers. A student raised her hand shyly. Dr. Grant. How did you survive everything you went through? Alina smiled softly. By remembering that survival isn't luck. It's a decision you make every single day. After the lecture, she returned home to her now serene mansion. The air smelled of jasmine and ocean breeze. She poured herself a glass of wine and sank into the couch. The house, once filled with echoes of betrayal, now breathed peace. Her phone buzzed, a text from Diana. Dinner tomorrow? You owe me sushi. Alina smiled. You never forget debts. That's why we're rich, Diana replied with a wink emoji. For the first time in months, Alina laughed. Not out of irony or exhaustion, but because it finally felt natural again. One Saturday morning, she chartered a small boat and went out alone. The captain, an old man with kind eyes, asked if she wanted company. No, she said. This one's personal. When they reached open water, Alina stood at the railing, the same endless blue that once tried to claim her. The wind whipped through her hair. She whispered, You didn't win. The sea glimmered back, vast and silent. Then she smiled, steady and unafraid. For the first time, the ocean no longer looked like death. It looked like freedom. That night, as she brushed her hair before bed, she caught her reflection watching her. There were faint lines around her eyes, proof of sleepless nights and survival. She didn't hate them. They were the scars of someone who'd fought to exist. Her reflection spoke back in her mind, calm and certain. You are not who you were on that yacht. She set down her brush, smiled faintly and whispered aloud. No, I'm stronger now. A popular journalist requested an exclusive interview. At first, Alina declined. She didn't want to relive the pain for entertainment. But later she agreed. Not for fame but to own her story. The cameras rolled. Dr. Grant, the interviewer asked gently, if you could say one thing to the woman you were before that day, what would it be? Alina thought for a long time. Don't mistake love for loyalty, she said finally. And never let anyone make you smaller than your own courage. The clip went viral in hours. Millions of women shared it with the caption, She rose again. A year after the trial, Alina spoke at a global women's innovation summit. Her presentation wasn't about biotech or finance, it was about endurance. When they threw me to the sharks, she told the crowd, I learned to swim harder. The audience rose to their feet, cheering. Diana grinned from the front row, recording the moment. Afterward, a teenage girl approached her backstage. You don't know me, she said shyly. But I want to start my own lab one day, because of you. Alina's eyes softened. Then promise me one thing, she said. Never let fear write your story. One evening, as the sun sank behind the bay, Patricia arrived unexpectedly. You've got a visitor, she said, her tone guarded. Alina frowned. Who? A young woman. Says she's Marcus's niece. Alina hesitated, then nodded. Send her in. The girl entered, nervous and polite. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what my uncle did. Alina studied her, trembling hands, tearful eyes. You're not responsible for his sins, she said softly. But learn from them. Power without empathy destroys. The girl nodded, tears spilling. Thank you. After she left, Alina stood by the window, thoughtful and calm. Weeks later, Alina hosted a quiet dinner with her closest circle. Patricia, Diana, Gregory and Thomas, the fisherman who had once pulled her from the sea. He arrived shyly, cap in hand. I never thought I'd see you again, ma'am, he said, smiling warmly. Alina hugged him. You didn't just save me, Thomas. You gave me a second life. They ate under the stars, laughter mixing with the ocean breeze. For once, the night held no shadows, only gratitude. Before bed, Alina wrote in her journal for the first time in months. Dear Alina, you have survived the deepest water and the darkest night. The world tried to silence you, but you chose to speak. You chose to rise. She paused, then added one final line. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for me. She closed the journal, her chest light for the first time since that terrible day. The next morning, the world outside glowed gold and calm. Alina stood barefoot on the terrace, the same place she once watched the ocean in fear. Now it was just water glimmering alive. She whispered, I forgive you, not to Marcus or Vivian, but to herself, to the version that once doubted, once drowned, once hurt. And as the sun rose over the horizon, Alina Grant smiled. Not as a survivor, but as a woman reborn. 6 months later, Alina stood before a sea of journalists, philanthropists, and young scientists at the grand opening of the Grant Institute for Biomedical Innovation. Behind her, a towering glass building gleamed under the Miami sun. Her new legacy. This institute, she said clearly, is for every woman who was told she couldn't lead, couldn't rise, couldn't win. The crowd erupted in applause. She smiled, calm and radiant. They said I'd drowned once. But you can't drown a storm. The words rippled across the world, and became the Institute's motto. Within months, the Institute sponsored dozens of projects across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Scholarships, mentorships, research grants. Alina read every proposal personally. One late night, she came across a letter from a girl in Ghana. You survived the sea. I survived silence. Now I want to help others find their voice too. Tears welled in Alina's eyes. She whispered, That's why I lived. It wasn't revenge that gave her power anymore. It was impact. One afternoon, while walking by the marina, Alina passed a luxury yacht that looked eerily familiar. Same design, same white gleam under sunlight. Her breath caught, but instead of fear, a smile curved her lips. A fisherman nearby called out, Beautiful boat, isn't it? Yes, Alina said softly. And deadly, if you don't know who's steering. He laughed without understanding. She walked on, sunlight dancing across the water behind her. The ocean was no longer her enemy, just another mirror reflecting her strength. Diana stopped by the mansion one Friday evening carrying files and a mischievous grin. You're officially being named Woman of the Year by Forbes, she announced. Alina blinked. Really? Diana chuckled. Don't act surprised. You've built an empire, survived an assassination attempt, and changed half the world. They had no choice. Alina laughed, shaking her head. Then I suppose I should buy a new dress. Or wear armor, Diana teased. You never know who you'll meet at those events. Alina smirked. If anyone tries to push me again, I'll push back harder. The gala was held in New York City. Under golden lights, Alina walked the red carpet in an emerald gown. Strong, elegant, alive. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. When she took the stage to accept her award, she paused, scanning the audience. "This isn't just my victory," she said. "It belongs to every woman who has ever been underestimated. Every survivor who chose to rebuild instead of break." The applause thundered, but what touched her most were the quiet tears of women in the crowd. Proof that stories of pain can become blueprints for strength. Back in Miami, she spent a quiet evening by the water, writing on a single page of ivory paper. "Dircy, you tried to drown me, but you only washed away my illusions. You took my fear and gave me purpose. You made me remember who I am." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small glass bottle. Then, as the sun dipped low, she tossed it into the waves. The current carried it away, not as a symbol of loss but of release. Months later, Thomas visited with his son. "We've been following your story," he said proudly. "Didn't know we'd rescued a legend." Alina laughed warmly. "You rescued a woman who hadn't realized her own strength yet." He smiled. "My wife says the sea tests the brave. Guess you passed." Alina's eyes softened. Maybe the sea was my teacher after all. They sat by the dock for hours, talking, watching the waves roll in like old friends. Every Friday, Alina invited her scholarship students to the institute's rooftop garden. They talk science, business, and life. One day, a shy intern asked, "Dr. Grant, do you ever get scared again?" Alina smiled. "Of course. Fear doesn't disappear. But now I let it guide me, not drown me." Another student asked, "What's the hardest thing you've learned?" "That healing," she said softly, "takes more courage than revenge." The girls nodded, their eyes bright with understanding. And in their faces, Alina saw her younger self. Fierce, determined, unstoppable. One quiet night, Alina sat on her terrace, watching the moon shimmer across the sea. Diana joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. "Still awake?" "Always," Alina said, smiling. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the waves. "You ever think about what could have happened?" Diana asked softly. "Every day," Alina replied. "And every day I thank the universe that it didn't." They clinked their mugs gently. No champagne. No applause. Just peace. Years later, people would tell the story of Dr. Alina Grant, the woman who was thrown to the sea and came back to build an empire. But for Alina, the real story wasn't about revenge or fame. It was about the choice to rise when sinking was easier. Standing once more at the edge of her dock, gray now threading through her curls, she whispered, "Some storms come to destroy you. Others come to rebuild you." The tide lapped gently at her feet, like a bow of acknowledgement.